Welcome to the podcast studio. We're here today with artist, DJ, techno fanatic, Æmma. Welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
It feels really strange and good. Of course, it was a long time ago since we spoke.
Yes,
and,
it's almost a year now.
Exactly, and what a year!
It's
like
a crazy year.
I think we all can agree on that. I'm not going to be. Yeah, it's not worth mentioning. We all know, but yeah.
And last time we met was in January, right?
Yes.
And at that time, you had just moved into a new studio, and we were talking about the future, and in
the bright, beautiful future with my new studio in place.
And at that time, we didn't know what was going to happen this year, but it's been so much stuff happening. What happened after our last meeting? Could you tell me a little bit?
Yeah, I actually get like goosebumps just by thinking of it, because it's been so intense and horrifying as well, of course. But because because of course after we had our last session, just few hours after, a bomb exploded, just wall to wall to the studio and blew everything out. So
that's crazy.
Of course, the kind of irony as well in sitting there and just like, finally, I'm ready to start work. Now I'm going to just like trailblazing and have my time here and just put in the hours in becoming a producer as I have wished for so long, and really develop my skills with the right preconditions. And then that happens, and you kind of go like, universe, what is this about? Like, what are you trying to tell me? And then everything that followed on that complete personal crisis, of course, with having so much work just being blown up literally, and the fact that I had left just half an hour before the bomb blew up. And that was because we had the interview, because normally I sit there quite late. So it's like so many emotions going on, and everything that's been ruined, what followed afterward, a situation like that. In just like organization and managing both emotions and everything practical that comes with cleaning up so much ruined stuff, and so much paperwork, and so much questions you don't have an answer to, and not questions you don't even know exist before they kind of fall upon you, of insurance companies and police, and so
wow.
crazy
So
stuff.
To explain to the listeners, it was actually a literal bomb exploded in the facility where you have your studio.
Exactly.
And that meant that your gear was destroyed, right?
Yes.
And you didn't
the
have
walls,
any studio
the
anymore.
Rooms, everything was blown up. And in a good way, if we talked about stoicism before, that kind of entered the stoicism world, is that it was in a way good that the bomb exploded so close to soundproof studios, because studio rooms are made to absorb shockwaves.
True.
So it feels like our rooms kind of saved the whole building. So in that case, it was a really good thing that it happened. But unfortunately, that meant a lot of work for us.
Yes.
But I try to kind of think it that way as well. And then of course, just a few weeks later, the corona hit, and with everything that followed with that, and I wasn't even recovered from the first crisis before you entered another crisis.
Right.
So I must say that this year has been heavy.
A tough start.
Tough start.
There's
so many.
Definitely on many levels.
Exactly. But at the same time, like, I still can eat every day. I can pay my rent. Like, I'm so lucky in so many ways at the same time. So it also gives you perspective, I think, on what you still have, even if it's a big sorrow for me to lose so much so quickly. Of course, all the gigs got cancelled, obviously. So that also have kind of put me into another type of relationship with my music, I would say.
Because you were focusing a lot at that time on producing and developing your production methods, and maybe also your perspective on your sound and your music.
Yes, exactly.
So after this event in January until now, almost a year later, or at the end of the year, where are you now? Like, what was the journey from that period to now, and how do you see yourself as as an artist and a DJ now?
Kind of a post artist and DJ.
we're in the post era.
No, post.
Post. Yeah, you're on a break,
I'm like
kind of
stagnated. No, but it's not that bad actually, or it's bad, but it's also interesting. So as an example, the first thing I did was explore my sound with the DJ concept of disruptive techno that we have talked about before in other episodes. And from there, it was quite easy to move into the studio because I already knew what sound I was looking for and my identity in the music. So it was super fun to just go from the DJ part of music into the production part, and I just looked forward to develop myself in that era or that section. And I still had like some kind of goal with what I wanted to achieve with that. So of course I focus a lot on what I want to achieve emotionally from my projects. That's like the big shift from where I was younger when, superstar DJ were still a thing that I was aiming for. And I kind of quit that thinking and found other goals that felt more valuable to me. And in this case, of course, I lost kind of all the goals because I didn't have my creative space anymore. And also my speakers, I didn't have any speakers at home because I had moved them to the studio and they blew up there.
Right.
So then I also didn't have music in my home. So it was like double up lost in that case.
Right.
And
you had most of your equipment was moved to the studio, so then you couldn't
at least the speakers.
Yeah.
So I had the DJ equipment at home, but I didn't have any speakers.
Yeah.
And of course, another thing that happens with that situation is that if I went away from work during the bomb on a sick leave for 2 weeks, and that meant that my work suffered. So I had to come back to a very stressful work situation where I had to kind of catch up those hours.
Right. Wow. But it seems like now when we met today, you kind of found a new kind of approach and a little bit of a new start.
I think so. I hope so.
Yeah,
I guess
a positive outcome in some way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Because I think more people than me felt this kind of, in the beginning of a zombie movie, when you like feel like this Armageddon situation in society, like that something really, really bad has happened, but you don't really know how the beginning or the rest of the story gonna fold out.
Yeah.
And I had the same feeling when Corona hit.
Yeah.
I was like, wow, I have no idea what this means. Because this is just like a completely new situation. So I think it felt like it took a while before society had kind of settled from that emotion and started to have like more of a real, like regular life again.
Yeah.
And so of course that took like almost until the summer for me. And then, so then when you kind of get, how can I say, when you stop doing those things that you love, you also don't find the inspiration to continue. Like it's like your routines change and you get stuck in one behavior, and it's hard to kind of start to break that, especially when you're in, even in Sweden didn't have a hard lockdown. We had a lockdown. It was more, even if it wasn't restricted by law. So of course you stayed at home in your apartment a lot. And that affects my creativity and emotions as well, especially when I didn't even have speakers. And I didn't notice because you just kind of try to make the life go by. Like you just run from one thing to another to kind of sort whatever needs to be sorted. So I didn't have any like time for reflection or thinking that actually the fact that I don't have music in my life affects me really negatively. I just felt bad.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and then
it's easy to forget that.
Exactly. And then when I realized like I really miss to have just music in my life, and I had some help from a friend who's just like, but what is the first thing we need to fix? Because it's so easy, I think, when you run around and try to kind of sort your life, that you only focus on the must instead of focus on the things that also gives you energy, because it feels like you don't have time for those tasks or those things. Instead of, for instance, those like insurance errands that I had after the bomb attack. Like that felt like that was just like suffocating me to
that
think
drains
of
energy instead of giving you energy like the music would have done.
And it felt like I couldn't start doing the good things before I had kind of moved away the bad things. But at the same time, when I never did move away the bad things, I never had the energy for anything. so
it became a negative spiral instead of
extremely vicious circle, extremely vicious.
Wow.
So then I had some help to actually buy some new speakers.
That's great.
Even if it weren't like the super best quality that I was used to, it was still like, just have sound at home. And
that's
then,
a big change. So then you started resetting a little bit your lifestyle and listening to music again. And
so just kind of started like, oh, I actually start to recognize myself, like this was me again. Like, this is how I can feel.
That's great.
So so that was like a big revelation to kind of remember. Like, okay, I need speakers. That's like the first thing I will fix next time if anything happens.
Definitely. And the last few weeks you also went through a little bit of a like rediscovery, right? With in terms of music and creation.
Yes. So of course that didn't change everything. It changed a bit, but for instance, like when as a DJ you always have to work with different trends in music, and of course no one wants to produce and release music when you don't have any gigs or clubs playing the music. So you also had like an identity crisis in the whole scene. So no one wants to play your music, and the only thing people wants to listen to is basically quite calm stuff that you can enjoy at home, not necessarily on a dance floor, which is what I'm focused at.
Yeah.
So I didn't even feel like when I was looking for new music, I didn't find anything. And so that's also a problem. And when I find anything, it was so big. It had went so much time between my last gig and when I wanted to do music again and start to build playlists again. So I didn't connect with the new music. I couldn't put it together with tracks that were more than 6 to 12 months old.
Right. And there was some kind of disruption between where you were and where you were starting again.
Exactly. And that's a quite normal thing. After 20 years, I know what that means.
Yeah.
But I also know what it takes to get back into that connection with the music. And that is time. Play your tracks over and over again. Try new ways of mixing. Try new ways of sorting the tracks. And that energy I still didn't have. Yeah. So it was still really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I just kind of felt I was locked up in this negative spiral. I just saw the walls of my apartment day after day, like nothing to give you inspiration, nothing to give you energy.
Nothing dynamic.
Nothing dynamic. Like Sweden is a dark place as well, wintertime. So it's
we're
like,
there now.
Exactly. Yeah. So the darkness that starts to affect you after the summer. So I had to kind of start to rethink the situation, because after a while you just notice that this isn't working. Like I will be depressed for real if I continue to live like this. Yeah. So I started to kind of find new ways of giving myself energy. And one of them, of course, is that I started to be aware of how much the environment affects me. So when I had a life where I do things, because you are invited to gigs, you work with people, you meet people out at clubs, and then you meet maybe for a coffee, and you go to your work, and you have exciting colleagues to play, like to interact with and get ideas from. Like all those things that we get automatically from our environment are now gone.
Right.
Because you're just at home in your own apartment. Yes. And in my place, I'm also alone in my apartment. So I had to kind of start to see how much in my environment that had changed that also affects my mood and my behavior. So I've started kind of sketch up now my new project. Yep. So if my previous project were more about finding myself in an artistic way in the music, now it's more about how can I find myself again in the music and be aware of what it is that affects me in creativity and the actions I take and the things I get motivated by and wants to do.
Right.
So that's like my new project now.
Yeah, that sounds cool though. So it's more like a puzzle where you try to find these elements again and find the new structure to integrate them in your life.
Yes, exactly. Because you get so aware of the things you get for free in a life when it's removed from you.
That's it.
And that's what I noticed when I ended up in this situation, that, okay, I can't rely on the things I get automatically from my life anymore. Exactly. Now I need to start to create it by myself. Yeah. And how does that look like? How can I do that? Yeah. And I must say, I'm not there yet. It's still a struggle. But I have seen certain elements that definitely work. And one of them, of course, is to remember that you're not alone. Yeah. I just have to take initiative to reach out to people and other musicians and other people in the same situation, so we can actually help each other out. Yeah. So that's because even if it's too hard for me right now to kind of open up my computer and start to make music again without my favorite drum machines, because they are in the bag over there, with like dust from the walls in the studio and just like still ruined, I can call a friend and we can do something in that person's studio, or or like we can send files to each other, and kind of you can always find ways.
And that's even better because then you complement each other, and it's not only on your table to work alone in your studio with all these gear, but you're using each other's gear and inspire each other.
Absolutely. And it kind of also went down to the basics. Like when I don't have the superstar DJ producer dream anymore, I have been focusing more on the community part of music. Yeah. And now that's even more important. So that's also something that I realized that I want to continue to work with this community aspect of being a musician, because if I don't make enough money or have enough gigs, it doesn't matter, because I will always enjoy my music if I have the community relationships in place.
Yeah. And I think having the community is also much more of a kind of exchange as opposed to like focusing only on your own goals.
Absolutely.
So I think that can also give you so much more and something completely different.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And in the end, the ones that makes the most music is the ones that makes music.
Yeah.
Like that's the first thing. So to just focus on having fun and enjoying what you do, the classical, like it's not the goal, it's the journey, like all that kind of cliches is really, really true.
It's a cliche, but it's there for a reason.
Exactly.
And if you only focus on the goal and not on the community part and not on the journey, it becomes hard, I think.
And I really love the energy you get from helping someone else.
Yeah.
So as an example, after the bomb attack, like the whole internet reached out to us, because it was me and some friends that where our 2 rooms got blown out. And it was so amazing to see that support from people, of course. And I was left with the feeling that I want to give back.
Yeah.
So for a long time, I felt a little bit guilty that I didn't have the energy to give back to everyone that had been so generous to us.
Right.
But now I kind of start to find ways. So as an example, Genelec, the sound speaker company that I bought my first speakers from, the ones that got blown up.
Right.
They contacted me on Instagram and helped me to fix my speakers for free.
That's great.
And amazing that they actually survived. They just fixed the outer part.
So you basically, what did you send them to Finland or something?
Yeah, they came and picked them up and sent them to Finland.
That's
and
awesome.
just cleaned them up a bit and changed the outer layer, but inside they were still good. So that's quite impressive quality of speakers, I must say. Sorry for that
really, really good
PR, but they were.
But it's part of the story, so I think it's
exactly.
that's great.
But that meant that I ended up with 2 pairs of speakers, but I only need 1. Pair, because I don't have a studio at the moment. So then I just reached out on Instagram to my followers and just like, is there anyone who are in need of 2 really good studio monitors?
Yeah.
So then I could kind of connect with other people that are suffering in the same way as I do. And I know that just kind of get those kind of equipment around you that makes it work is something that can give you that extra energy. And then they become, because I said, like, you can have those speakers until I need them again, which it will be in several months at least. But only if you produce those, like 2 tracks a month.
Right.
Like
but that's great.
I put some pressure on him because I wanted to have that like external motivation factor that like what is it called when you're there's a name for this that I don't remember now. But
anyway, it's external motivation. It's accountability.
Accountability is what I'm looking for. Exactly. So one guy, I picked one guy that I felt were in the right place that really like needed this and also was really ready to start. So he had already started a bit on himself, but it was a struggle. Yeah. So he came over and picked up the speakers. Yeah. And I mean, now I'm so invested in his story.
Yeah, and listening to his music and that's
exactly.
Great.
So I try to kind of find those ways where we can just help each other out and remove this feeling of like loneliness and try to reconnect with the scene in those different ways.
I think that's great because that has kind of been the theme of this year, like loneliness and isolation, and like any way you can get out of that through music or through collaboration is great.
Absolutely. So I'm really looking forward to see where this can take me. Yeah. And also I made one of those open playlists again that where people can just put their favorite, also my followers, so they put their favorite music and their own productions in the playlist, open playlist on Spotify. And it felt so good to listen to that music because I know that they like my style of music because that's why they're following me, and now they're sharing back to me their favorite music. So it was both a fun thing to just listen to what they give me, But also I got so many new ideas, and it was the best way to also listen to many of my followers' own productions.
Exactly.
So I found a lot of new music that now inspires me, that are also from those friends that I have online now, that feels more like buddies instead of just like followers.
Yeah.
So it also feels good, really good there to kind of. Now I can play their music in my sets, and I have another way of giving back, but they gave to me first. So
exactly.
I really
it's
like
a
that.
give and take relationship in some ways.
So I try to focus on the giving part, and then I enjoy when I get back.
Cool. And on that note, what about the track? Was it called 909 Problems, right?
Yes,
Could you tell me a bit about that story?
That's also fun. It's not 100% finished yet, but it just needs a little bit of polishing. But that's also like an Instagram communication story that I made a fun meme where I'm drinking like a coffee that says, I don't have a problem. What is it called? I don't have a problem with techno. I have a problem without techno.
Okay.
So it's like a reference joke to, if you're addicted to caffeine or alcohol or whatever. So I made that meme and joking about being, techno fanatic. And then we started to kind of play around in the comments about 909 problems instead of 99 problems, of course.
A reference to the drum machine, right?
Yeah, so 909 is exactly, that's a drum machine, and 99, of course, is the track with Jay-Z, and isn't it like a movie or something from the beginning, or I don't remember.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's been used in soundtracks and all kinds of things.
Yeah, but I know, at least I know the 99 from Jay-Z. And then one of the followers wrote like, but a pitch ain't one. And pitch is of course the tempo control you have on a DJ player. So then we had like the 909 problem, but a pitch ain't one joke.
Yeah.
And now when I wrote this kind of reaching out post just recently, where I started to do this kind of more community work, one of my friends reached out back and said like, come over and we can make some music, like I'll help you get started again, just come over and we can, I can show you some things and you can get some sound to work with back home, because he has some really nice analog gear.
That's very nice. I love
so
that.
just like the small things you need to get started, to remove a little bit of the resistance you have when you start from scratch on your own. And we just had like a super fun day, and we was like, just let's do this track. Like, let's do the 909 problem track.
Why not? Yeah,
and we did. So soon to be released.
Very cool.
So we'll see. Probably it's going to be like just an underground release for
but
fun.
Still, that's great. I mean, any releases now is great, especially also even if it's digital. It's accessible to people, and I think a lot of people would also be happy to hear some of your work soon.
Mostly his work in that case. I was more like the muse and the creative,
but whatever, collaborative work.
Yeah, but I learned so much from that session, and I definitely felt like this wave of creativity and lust for life again, just by playing around with something so silly, because obviously this is a joke for by producers for producers, so most people will not understand when they listen to it.
But that also gives you less pressure, because it's based on more of a joke. It's for fun. It's improvisation. It's not like, it doesn't have to be heavy and dark and moody or stuff like that, that you can also often see within the techno scene,
Absolutely. So just like find the creativity and happiness again, and definitely the path to that is to remove pressure. Yeah. And that I think a lot of us are struggling with right now, that when you get behind so much of your regular standard or delivery of whatever you work with, it's so hard because you compare yourself with where you want to be. Yeah. And now you have to kind of start working again, and you just like see the other ones like over there. Yeah. Or at least the fictional you that you want to be. And you have to start from such a like low place. Yeah. And it's so heavy to remember, like that's the mountain and I'm supposed to be up there. And
but it's better to just go back to where you are right now and just go and look at some analog gear and start pushing buttons.
Don't even look at that mountain.
Why? Like, what's the reason or purpose for looking at that?
Yeah,
actually, it doesn't give you anything, right?
Yeah, just remove anything fun in your emotions. Yeah. Cool. So that was it was just a fun project to do, and we will continue to do it, of course.
Sounds good.
Until it's finished, completely finished. But it was
I think we can also maybe mention that you had developed you mentioned it before, but you developed this style before in your DJing that was called Disruptive Techno.
Yes.
Do you want to just give us a brief explanation for someone that might not have heard about that before? and then maybe move into what it means to you today as opposed to maybe 1 year ago?
Yes, absolutely. Because of course that is also a process. But it started out with me wanting to challenge the handcraft of DJing in a new world. So I come from the vinyl DJing, where of course it's a struggle just to to beat match is really hard work and requires a lot of practice. And then you start to have new technology that starts to automate and a lot of the things that makes a DJ. And you're standing there after a while and it's like, what am I even doing here? Like I choose tracks, but that's not part of the handcraft of being a mixing DJ in my world. I want to be creative with my players.
Yeah.
And it kind of removes presence as well in music when you have to, wait for things to happen. Like I put play and everything is even if you don't use sync, it's really easy to beat match. Instead of for vinyl where you have to be that all the time.
Because you're kind of old school, right? When you started 20 years ago, it was only like vinyl decks and all of that.
Yeah. And I was also quite late changing to CD.
Yeah.
And then of course changing to MP3 or digital.
Yeah.
So I really have like the handcraft in my hands and my soul in how I want to work with music physically. So this was a way to start to discover again, like what can be the identity of a DJ when so much is automated.
Yeah.
Like how can I express myself as a DJ? What is the things that makes me unique as a DJ in my expression of actually doing the mixing, not just choosing tracks. Yeah. So how can I make myself heard with a unique sound and only using a regular DJ setup and not be depending on my taste in track selection?
Okay.
And kind of break out the actual handcraft of being a DJ, not just a selector.
Right.
So that was also part of it.
That's a very interesting definition that's not always talked about.
Yeah,
either,
exactly. So I think that's also something that kind of came along with my work, that I started to see more and more what I was actually working with here. And a part of that is kind of an what would you call it? Like a counter approach to the trend that producers are becoming DJs. So
that's true.
The biggest DJs today are mainly producers that became famous because of their music. So they already have their artistic expression in the studio. And when they go out on the scene, it's more like a showcase of what they have already done. So the creative aspect isn't shown and developed on stage. It was made before stage.
I see, yeah.
And since I'm only a DJ, it's always been important to me to be creative on stage because I have nothing else to rely on.
Yeah, it's a stage expression.
Yes.
That means almost everything to you.
Yes, exactly. So of course, I look at all those big DJs and I don't see any creativity out there. And I feel that something in the handcraft of being a DJ is lost. And I wanted to explore that and see if I could make it better.
Very ambitious, very nice motivation to have.
Yes.
Yeah.
I kind of overdo it a lot.
Well, it's better to overdo it, I think.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
That's how I am. Actually, some friends of mine in another podcast, they started like, but why are you even doing this? I don't understand. Why do you make it so hard for yourself?
Yeah.
But for
you're
me,
kind of trying to challenge the norm or the current situation. Yeah.
Exactly. So either I'm just happy playing tracks for people and enjoying my time in the booth, but I have an artistic ambition that I need to express and explore. So for me, of course, it's about feeling I express myself and create something on my own, not just playing tracks. Yeah. So I have an individual freedom when I play this new way that I can't have if I'm just relying on old ways of mixing.
I see. And that's, by using new decks and mixers and technology as well, you can do that, right? Yeah.
So what I'm doing is that I hire the level of the technical level in my sets and creative level. So it's a concept based on layering loops.
Yeah.
And many knows the term mashup mixing. So I make a new track based on old tracks.
Yeah.
So I take like 2 or 3 or 4 tracks and then I break them apart and put them together again to make a new track.
Yeah.
So of course there in the combination of those tracks, I can find something new that didn't exist before the gig and will not exist again afterwards. So it's
only
a very
in the moment.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a very live experience in what can happen. And I surprise myself over and over again on stage, which gives me a lot of like presence again, because suddenly it's risky to be up there. Suddenly I have to be super aware of everything that happened before me, what plan I have forward, what's happening in the moment. There's so many things to be aware of when you work this way and trust yourself to always get the new ideas that's required to make a set like this interesting.
You cannot be lazy, really.
I can't be lazy.
Present. You
Absolutely.
need to be in the zone, kind of.
For sure. And then I realized that now I'm put back into the exact emotion I had when I was playing vinyl. Because suddenly I was sucked into the music again. And when you're so present in the music that you really have to feel every track, every beat you're playing, that's when you can find this magic that you can that you can share with the audience, where they feel that, wow, something extra is happening here. Like the emotions stick together. I can bring them on this journey, this emotional journey.
I think that's kind of the unforgettable moments, like those sets. Like there are some sets that I remember from like 10 years ago, like seeing Ricardo Villalobos 3 a.m. in Paris or whatever. You know, like it's those sets that felt like this happened only this night, and that was unique. Yeah. And I wouldn't say I've experienced that many sets like that in my life, you know. So it's sets that stay with you.
Yes, absolutely. And for me, the best sets I've always listened to is when I feel this connection emotionally between tracks. And if you're not present, it's so easy to just put on a track that might be, you know, it might be the right key, it might be perfect beat match, but there's no emotional transition. Like you want to move people emotionally when you do this, not just, you know, play along and like, oh, you can't hear the transition from one track to another. I want to create like distortion inside where you actually start to experience yourself again. And I found that doing this, I could create that because it moved me emotionally, and then I could, of course, express that emotion.
That's great. That makes me want to hear one of your sets again.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a time to do a new live stream, actually.
Yeah.
With all the new tracks I've had from my open playlist.
Definitely.
But what also happened when I did this was that when I increased the technical level, I couldn't interact with the audience as much anymore, because suddenly I have started and work with an introverted process, if you would call it like that, like an introvert process. So I had to be so focused on stage that I couldn't really take in anything from the outside.
I see.
And I noticed also that it took some months and weeks of practice, no, actually more months and years actually, to start to kind of automate all the new sounds that I had to consider and work with at the same time. Yeah. So you have, you know, multiple sound sources of 3 decks or 4 decks, but you also have every track breaken out in 8 loops or 8 parts. Wow. So then that means, of course, 8 times 3 that I have to kind of know in my head what to do with. And also then you have, of course, the tracks before that or the loops. So that could be like several sounds then that you bring into a mix, and then you need to work with them in the moment, and then you also need to have a plan for what's going to happen in
you need to kind of create those circuits in your brain to be able to handle that, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's extreme mental load, which I love, but extreme. So I could compare it with learning to drive.
Definitely.
So when you're in the traffic the first time, like it's overwhelming. It's so many impressions, like you don't even know what to look at. Like it's so many things. And then after a while, the brain starts to automate all those information, and you can start to see clearly, and suddenly you can even have a conversation while driving. But you shouldn't.
No, but I totally get that. Like you automate it and you make it part of your way of DJing. Basically.
Exactly. But I definitely need like the physical training of the brain to be able to mix this way. And that's something I also recognize from learning to beat match on vinyl. Like you physically need to train yourself to do this. You can't just do it. For some reason, people have the expectations on DJs that they're just going to be able to do everything in a way. Right. But no, it requires a lot of practice to set those circuits in the brain.
Of course.
But then after a while, like now when I've done this for 2 years, it's become my standard way of DJing. Yeah. This is the way I plan my sets. I prep my tracks. I plan, like I have this vision of what I want to achieve and so on. But I also felt that I lost a bit of the interaction with the audience because I had to be this focused. Yeah. So now my next like challenge will be to find the perfect balance between super technical and creative, but also something be monkey Emma and just have fun on stage.
Yeah, like, some playfulness.
Yeah, exactly. So the playfulness again. Like I needed to dig down in that rabbit hole for sure. It was a great journey. And I learned so much about myself and about creativity and flow and strategies to take me there. Yeah. And now I want to just like pick the cherries from the, what is it called?
Yeah, use that and then be a little bit more loose with it.
Yes, exactly. So I can balance between those two states in a set.
Yeah. And it's almost like you go to school, you learn the rules, and then you can break them, right?
Absolutely. So, and I'm good at breaking rules. So.
Awesome.
No, absolutely. So yeah.
So looking at this, like, what are you seeing in the coming months or in the future for you? You want to release a track, right? And what's your?
I don't even think I want to release a track anymore.
No.
Like I don't even have those ambitions. Right now I put it so easy for myself. I want to feel like energetic and want to feel creativity again when I'm like I want to approach music with energy. Like I had to kind of go back to the basics.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I guess
go back to the roots, to the kind of core of your love for music.
Yeah, and just like find new routines, because obviously the routines were completely broken. Yeah. And before the studio, I struggled with routines as well, because even then you had to be home a lot. And so I need to kind of find a better process and routine for how to make music happen, so I can kind of fall into it a bit more. Yeah. Like not without so much struggle. Yeah. I'd say to find that is like the biggest goal right now.
Right. To make it more an integrated part of your life.
Yes, exactly. Like just like bring it back to my life, and just continue with the community part and the playfulness, and I know I have some gigs waiting for me, so it's not completely dead. We're just waiting for this virus to kind of fade away a bit more.
That's great. So there's light at the end of the tunnel.
It's light, yes, absolutely. And I think this situation will help me to get to know more people that I can, bring into my life for the future, and just see what that kind of interaction will bring me. So it feels pretty good.
It sounds like a very good stage now of your artistic progress.
Yes, but I think so. It's still quite fresh, so to speak. And of course, at work, we had a lot of pressure on us during this situation. So of course, that will also start to calm down. It's already started, so I get more and more like air in my private life to play around with as well.
That sounds great.
But the mental part, I would say, is the most important, to kind of find the right way now to find motivation again in those hard circumstances of lockdowns and darkness and
all of that.
Isolation.
That sounds great.
So we'll see how it goes.
So if maybe we have to wrap things up now, but could you tell me a little bit, if someone wants to follow your work, like where should they go? Where should they look for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm mostly present at Instagram. Yeah. So that Æmma _official.
Okay, great.
And Facebook is also. Facebook. Yeah. And I start to release things on YouTube when I do live sets, but I think that Instagram and Facebook would be the best places to find me.
Okay, great. Æmma, thank you so much for coming here today, and I hope we can meet again and discuss your progress as an artist soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.